Women don't like nerds, Nathan insisted after his latest rejection at the Sci-Fi convention. According to him and his online support groups, women were shallow individuals who only wanted buff guys with sports cars, completely dismissing intelligent, passionate men like himself who happened to love anime and role-playing games. My name is Olivia, I'm 29 years old, and I've been dealing with this toxic mindset for far too long. What I'm about to reveal will completely obliterate this damaging myth and expose the real reason why certain men in nerd culture struggle with relationships, and I guarantee you, it has nothing whatsoever to do with their geeky hobbies. I first encountered Nathan at a local bookstore Sci-Fi section about 3 years ago. I was browsing through the Isaac Asimov collection, searching for Foundation, when this guy with blonde hair and a faded Star Trek shirt approached me uninvited. You know, most people start with the robot series before jumping into Foundation, he said, not even introducing himself. It's pretty complex stuff. Have you read much Asimov before, or are you just getting into sci-fi because it's trendy now? The condescending tone should have been an immediate red flag, but I was genuinely excited to meet someone who shared my literary interests. Actually, I've been reading science fiction since I was 12, I replied. I just wanted to revisit Foundation because I heard they're making a TV adaptation. Nathan's eyes lit up, but not in a good way. Oh great, another show that's going to ruin a classic. I bet you loved what Disney did to Star Wars too, right? That was my first taste of Nathan's gatekeeping mentality, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. Over the next few weeks, we started hanging out regularly. Nathan was pursuing a computer science degree and spent most of his free time playing World of Warcraft or watching obscure anime series that he claimed were way better than mainstream garbage. At first, I was impressed by his knowledge and passion. He could discuss the intricacies of Japanese animation techniques, explain complex programming concepts, and had read more fantasy novels than anyone I'd ever met. Nathan was undeniably intelligent, and his enthusiasm for his interests was initially attractive. Most girls don't appreciate this stuff, he told me during one of our early coffee dates. They think it's childish or weird. You're different though, you actually get it. I felt special, chosen even. Nathan made me believe that our shared interests created some kind of unique bond that he couldn't find with other women. What I didn't realize was that this was just the beginning of a pattern that would become increasingly toxic and exhausting. Our relationship progressed quickly. Nathan was attentive and affectionate, constantly texting me links to articles about upcoming movie releases or new game announcements. He introduced me to his friend group, a collection of guys who spent their weekends playing Dungeons and Dragons and debating the merits of different comic book storylines. Finally, someone who won't roll their eyes when we talk about important stuff, his friend Marcus said when Nathan brought me to their weekly game session. Nathan's been complaining forever about how impossible it is to find girls who appreciate real culture. The phrase real culture struck me as odd, but I brushed it off. These guys were passionate about their hobbies, and there was nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed the D&D sessions and found their discussions about storytelling and world-building fascinating. But gradually, subtle red flags began to emerge. During our game nights, Nathan would often interrupt me mid-sentence to correct minor details about lore or rules. If I suggested a creative solution to a problem in the game, he'd shake his head and explain why it wouldn't work, often in a tone that implied I didn't understand the complexity of what we were playing. You'll get better at this, he'd say with a patronizing smile. It takes time to really understand all the nuances. The irony was that I'd been playing tabletop games since high school, but Nathan seemed determined to position himself as my patient teacher rather than my equal partner in the hobby. This dynamic extended beyond gaming. When we watched movies together, Nathan would pause the film every few minutes to explain references I'd supposedly missed or to point out mistakes that casual viewers wouldn't notice. If I mentioned enjoying a particular TV show, he'd immediately launch into a critique about why the source material was superior or how the adaptation had dumbed down the original story for mainstream audiences. You'd probably like the manga better, he'd say dismissively. The anime version cuts out a lot of the philosophical depth. It became exhausting to share any opinion without receiving a lecture about why my perspective was incomplete or uninformed. Nathan wasn't trying to have conversations with me, he was trying to educate me, as if my role in the relationship was to be his eager student rather than his equal partner. The breaking point came during a local comic convention. I'd been looking forward to the event for weeks, excited to see some of my favorite artists and maybe pick up some rare issues. Nathan had been attending conventions for years and promised to show me how things really work. We'd barely walked through the entrance when Nathan spotted a woman in an elaborate cosplay outfit posing for photos near the main stage. She was dressed as a character from a popular anime series, and her costume was incredibly detailed and well-crafted. "Fake geek girl," Nathan muttered under his breath, loud enough for me to hear. "Bet she doesn't even watch the show. She's just here for attention." I was shocked by the venom in his voice. "How can you possibly know that?" I asked. "Her costume is amazing. She obviously put a lot of work into it." Nathan rolled his eyes. "Trust me, I can tell. Real fans don't dress like that. She's just here to get likes on Instagram and validation from desperate guys who think she's actually into this stuff." The woman in question was clearly enjoying herself, enthusiastically discussing the character with other fans who approached her for photos. She knew details about the series that even I wasn't familiar with, and her passion for the character was obvious to anyone paying attention. But Nathan had already made up his mind. In his worldview, attractive women who participated in nerd culture were automatically suspect. They were either fake fans seeking attention or they were somehow exploiting male fans for financial gain. This attitude became a recurring theme. Nathan would point out booth babes at gaming conventions, dismissing any woman who worked in the industry as someone who was just using her looks rather than earning her position through genuine expertise. He'd complain about female streamers on Twitch, claiming they were ruining gaming by attracting viewers through sex appeal rather than skill. "It's not fair to guys who are actually good at games," he'd argue. "These women are just taking advantage of lonely nerds who don't know any better." The hypocrisy was staggering. Nathan himself followed dozens of these same female streamers on social media, regularly commenting on their posts and even subscribing to a few OnlyFans accounts of women who incorporated anime or gaming themes into their content. When I pointed out this contradiction, he became defensive. "That's completely different," he insisted. "I'm supporting content creators who are actually part of the community. And at least I'm honest about what I'm looking for instead of pretending these women are just here because they love games." It was a circular logic that absolved him of any responsibility while simultaneously condemning the very women he was financially supporting. Nathan wanted to consume content created by attractive women in nerd spaces, but he also wanted to maintain the narrative that such women were inherently inauthentic or exploitative. This double standard extended to how he treated me as well. While Nathan constantly complained about women who didn't appreciate real nerd culture, he also seemed threatened when I demonstrated knowledge that rivaled or exceeded his own. During a discussion about comic book storylines with his friends, I mentioned that I preferred some of the lesser-known independent publishers over the major mainstream titles. Instead of being pleased that his girlfriend shared his interest in comics, Nathan immediately began questioning my knowledge. "Which independent publishers?" he demanded. "Name some specific titles. What's your favorite storyline from Image Comics?" It felt like an interrogation rather than a conversation. When I answered his questions accurately and in detail, Nathan's friends seemed impressed, but Nathan himself looked uncomfortable. Later that evening, he accused me of showing off and trying to make him look bad in front of his friends. "I was just trying to participate in the conversation," I protested. "Isn't that what you wanted? A girlfriend who shares your interests?" "Yeah, but you don't have to act like you know more than everyone else," he replied. "It comes across as competitive and weird." This was the heart of the problem. Nathan claimed he wanted a woman who appreciated nerd culture, but what he really wanted was a woman who would admire his expertise without challenging it. He wanted someone who would be impressed by his knowledge, not someone who might actually know more than he did about certain topics. The relationship became increasingly tense as these patterns became more apparent. Nathan's complaints about how women don't like nerds intensified whenever he felt insecure about his own position within nerd communities. If a female coworker got promoted at his tech job, he'd attribute it to diversity hiring rather than merit. If a woman at the game store recommended a title he hadn't heard of, he'd dismiss her as someone who probably just read about it online. Nathan's worldview required him to believe that women were either completely uninterested in nerd culture or they were somehow fake, manipulative participants who didn't deserve to be taken seriously. This allowed him to maintain his identity as an underappreciated, misunderstood individual while avoiding any self-reflection about his own behavior and attitudes. The final straw came during a conversation about dating within nerd communities. Nathan had been complaining about a mutual friend who'd recently started dating a woman he'd met at a board game meetup. "She's probably just using him," Nathan said dismissively. "Women only date nerdy guys when they want financial security or someone they can control. She'll get bored once she finds someone more exciting." I couldn't stay silent anymore. "That's an incredibly cynical way to view relationships," I said. "Maybe she genuinely likes him. Maybe she's attracted to his intelligence and passion, just like I was initially attracted to yours." Nathan laughed bitterly. "Come on, be honest. You didn't approach me because I was nerdy. You approached me despite it. Deep down, all women wish their boyfriends were more conventionally masculine. The accusation stung because it revealed how little Nathan actually understood about attraction, relationships, or even me as an individual. I tried to explain that his enthusiasm for his interests had genuinely been one of the things that drew me to him initially. When someone is passionate about something they love, it's attractive regardless of what that something is. I love that you can spend hours discussing the themes in a science fiction novel, I told him. I love that you get excited about new technology. I love that you have this whole rich inner world of interests and knowledge. That's not something I'm tolerating, that's something I'm attracted to. But Nathan couldn't accept this. In his mind, admitting that women could genuinely be attracted to nerdy qualities would undermine his entire victim narrative. If women actually liked intelligent, passionate men who happened to love geeky things, then Nathan would have to confront the possibility that his dating struggles had more to do with his personality and behavior than with societal prejudices against his hobbies. You're just saying that to make me feel better, he insisted. Every woman says she wants a sensitive, intelligent guy, but when push comes to shove, you all go for the same alpha male types. This conversation revealed the toxic foundation underlying Nathan's entire worldview. He'd convinced himself that his struggles with relationships were due to external factors beyond his control: society's unfair prejudice against nerds, women's shallow preferences, the media's promotion of unrealistic masculine ideals. This victim mentality absolved him of any need to examine his own behavior or work on personal growth. The relationship ended not long after that conversation. I realized that Nathan's complaints about women not liking nerds were really complaints about women not automatically worshipping him despite his problematic attitudes toward them. He wanted to be appreciated for his intelligence and interests while simultaneously dismissing and devaluing women who shared those same qualities. What Nathan and men like him fail to understand is that being passionate about science fiction, gaming, anime, or any other nerdy interest isn't inherently unattractive. Many women find intelligence, creativity, and genuine enthusiasm incredibly appealing qualities in a potential partner. The problem isn't the interests themselves, it's the toxic attitudes and behaviors that some men in these communities display toward women. After my relationship with Nathan ended, I started paying more attention to these dynamics within nerd communities. I noticed how certain men would immediately question women's knowledge or credentials, assuming that any female participant must be less informed or genuinely interested than her male counterparts. I saw how women's contributions to discussions were often dismissed or minimized, while men making identical points were praised for their insight. I also noticed how some men in these spaces seemed to view women as either completely absent from nerd culture or as unwelcome intruders who were somehow corrupting or commercializing their hobbies. They complained about the fake geek girl phenomenon while simultaneously consuming content created by women in these spaces and then criticizing those same women for monetizing their participation. The cognitive dissonance was remarkable. These men claimed to want more women in their communities, but they also created hostile environments that made women feel unwelcome or constantly required to prove their legitimacy. They wanted to be appreciated for their knowledge and passion, but they refused to extend that same appreciation to women who demonstrated identical qualities. About a year after breaking up with Nathan, I started dating Alex, who I met through a mutual friend at a book club focused on science fiction and fantasy literature. Alex was immediately different from Nathan in several crucial ways. When we first started talking about books, Alex asked about my favorite authors and actually listened to my answers without trying to quiz me or prove that his tastes were more sophisticated. When I mentioned loving Ursula K. Le Guin's work, he got genuinely excited and recommended some of her lesser-known short stories that he thought I might enjoy. "Have you read The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas?" he asked. "It's this incredible thought experiment about ethics and society. I'd love to hear what you think about it." The difference in approach was striking. Instead of testing my knowledge or trying to educate me, Alex was eager to have a genuine conversation about themes and ideas. He treated me as an intellectual equal from the very beginning, someone whose perspective might actually add value to the discussion rather than someone who needed to be brought up to his level of understanding. Alex's enthusiasm for his interests was just as intense as Nathan's had been, but it manifested in completely different ways. He'd get excited about new discoveries in astrophysics or spend hours working on programming projects that fascinated him, but he never made me feel stupid for not sharing his level of expertise in every area. When we watched movies together, Alex would share interesting trivia or behind-the-scenes information, but he did it as a way to enhance our shared enjoyment rather than to demonstrate his superior knowledge. If I had insights about a film's themes or cinematography, he'd engage with my ideas thoughtfully rather than dismissing them or trying to one-up me. The contrast became even more apparent when we attended conventions and community events together. Alex genuinely enjoyed meeting other fans and learning about their perspectives and experiences. He didn't view attractive women in cosplay as threats to the authenticity of the community. He appreciated the creativity and craftsmanship that went into their costumes and was happy to see people expressing their love for characters and stories in such elaborate ways. "Look at that incredible detail work," he'd say, admiring someone's costume. "She must have spent months working on that. The dedication is amazing." Alex understood something that Nathan never could: genuine enthusiasm for your interests makes you more attractive, not less. When someone is passionate about something they love, it creates an infectious energy that draws people in. But when that passion is coupled with gatekeeping, condescension, and hostility toward others who share your interests, it becomes repulsive rather than attractive. The relationship with Alex helped me understand what I'd been missing with Nathan. Alex's love for science fiction, gaming, and technology wasn't something I had to tolerate or overlook, it was something I genuinely admired about him. His curiosity about the world, his excitement about new discoveries, his ability to find wonder in complex ideas and stories, these qualities made him more attractive, not less. More importantly, Alex never made me feel like I had to choose between being taken seriously and being feminine. He didn't see my appearance or femininity as evidence that I couldn't be genuinely interested in nerdy topics. He didn't assume that I was less knowledgeable or passionate than he was just because I happened to be a woman. This experience taught me that the problem was never about women not liking nerds. The problem was about certain men using their interests as shields for toxic behavior and then blaming women's supposed shallowness when that behavior made them unattractive as partners. Real nerd culture, the kind built on genuine curiosity, creativity, and passion for ideas, is incredibly welcoming to women. Some of the most insightful discussions I've had about literature, film, games, and technology have been with women who share these interests. Female authors have created some of the most groundbreaking works in science fiction and fantasy. Women game developers, artists, writers, and content creators have made enormous contributions to every aspect of nerd culture. The men who complain that women don't like nerds are usually the same men who refuse to acknowledge or respect these contributions. They've created a narrative that positions them as victims of societal prejudice when the reality is that they're often victims of their own toxic attitudes and behaviors. I've seen this pattern repeated countless times in online communities, at conventions, and in real-life social groups. Men will complain about women not being interested in their hobbies while simultaneously creating environments that are hostile to female participation. They'll claim that women are too shallow to appreciate intelligence and creativity while dismissing female fans as fake or attention-seeking. The solution isn't for women to change their preferences or lower their standards. The solution is for these men to examine their own behavior and attitudes toward women in their communities. Being passionate about science fiction doesn't give you license to quiz women about their knowledge before accepting them as legitimate fans. Loving video games doesn't excuse dismissing female gamers as less skilled or dedicated than their male counterparts. Intelligence and genuine enthusiasm for your interests are attractive qualities, but they have to be coupled with respect, kindness, and the ability to see women as full human beings rather than as intruders in your spaces or as prizes to be won through demonstrations of superior knowledge. After 3 years of dating Alex, I can confidently say that women absolutely do like nerds. We like men who are passionate, curious, creative, and intelligent. What we don't like are men who use their interests as weapons to exclude, demean, or test us. We don't like men who consume content created by women while simultaneously arguing that women don't belong in these communities. The narrative that women don't like nerds is a convenient excuse that allows certain men to avoid taking responsibility for their own behavior. It's easier to blame societal prejudice or female shallowness than to examine whether your approach to relationships might be the actual problem. If you're a man who genuinely believes that your nerdy interests are preventing you from finding romantic success, I encourage you to look more deeply at how you interact with women in your communities. Do you treat female fans with the same respect and assumption of knowledge that you extend to male fans? Do you create inclusive environments where women feel welcome to share their perspectives and expertise? Do you appreciate women's contributions to the hobbies and communities you claim to love? The truth is that nerd culture has always included women, and many of us are actively looking for partners who share our interests and passions. But we want to be treated as equals, not as students, intruders, or prizes. We want partners who celebrate our knowledge rather than constantly testing it, who appreciate our enthusiasm rather than questioning its authenticity. Nathan's belief that women don't like nerds was really a belief that women don't like him, specifically. Rather than examining why that might be the case, he chose to blame external factors and maintain a victim narrative that absolved him of any need for self-reflection or personal growth. Alex, on the other hand, never doubted that his interests and passions could be attractive to the right person. He approached relationships with confidence, respect, and genuine curiosity about other people's perspectives and experiences. That confidence and respect made him infinitely more attractive than Nathan's knowledge and expertise ever could have. The difference between these two men taught me that attraction isn't about what you're interested in, it's about how you treat the people around you, especially the people you claim to want to attract. Nathan's expertise in various nerdy topics couldn't overcome his fundamental lack of respect for women. Alex's enthusiasm for his interests was attractive precisely because it was coupled with kindness, curiosity, and the ability to see me as a full person rather than as a representative of women as a category. So no, women don't dislike nerds. We dislike men who hide their toxic attitudes behind their hobbies and then blame us for not finding those attitudes attractive. We dislike men who want to be appreciated for their intelligence while refusing to recognize or respect intelligence in women. We dislike men who create exclusive communities and then complain that women aren't interested in participating. If you want to attract women who share your interests, the solution isn't to complain about how shallow we supposedly are. The solution is to examine your own behavior and attitudes, create welcoming spaces in your communities, and treat women as the complex, intelligent individuals we actually are. The problem was never that I didn't appreciate Nathan's love for science fiction, gaming, and technology. The problem was that Nathan didn't appreciate me as a person. He wanted a girlfriend who would validate his interests without challenging his worldview, someone who would be impressed by his knowledge without expecting to be treated as an intellectual equal. That's not a relationship, that's a fantasy. And no amount of shared interests can sustain a relationship built on such a fundamentally unequal foundation. Women don't dislike nerds, we dislike being treated as less than by the men who claim to want our companionship. Alex showed me what it looks like when someone's passion for their interests enhances rather than detracts from their ability to connect with others. His enthusiasm for science fiction made our conversations richer. His love of technology inspired me to learn more about programming. His curiosity about the world made every day more interesting. That's what genuine attraction to nerdy qualities looks like. It's not about finding someone who will be impressed by your knowledge, it's about finding someone whose knowledge and curiosity complement and challenge your own. It's about building a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine appreciation for each other's minds and interests. The men who insist that women don't like nerds are missing out on incredible opportunities for connection with women who share their passions. But they'll continue missing those opportunities as long as they maintain toxic attitudes toward the very women they claim to want to attract. Meanwhile, women like me will continue gravitating toward men like Alex, men who understand that intelligence, creativity, and passion are attractive precisely because they enhance someone's ability to connect with and appreciate others, not because they provide ammunition for gatekeeping or superiority complexes. The choice is theirs. They can continue blaming women for their dating struggles, or they can examine their own behavior and work on becoming the kind of partners that women actually want. But they can't do both. And until they make that choice, they'll keep wondering why their extensive knowledge of comic book lore isn't enough to sustain a healthy relationship. Women don't dislike nerds. We dislike toxic behavior disguised as nerd culture. And once these men understand the difference, they might finally have the success in dating that they've been blaming us for preventing all along.